believe that humans can communicate with the deceased? The great. That this is entirely possible. The deceased have many mysteries they wish to convey to us. If only we are intelligent and knowledgeable enough to listen and understand those messages. So how can we hear and comprehend the secrets they want to share? Watch until the end of the video to discover this. Collected cases of injustice rectified. Compiled by the founder of Chinese forensic science, Zhang was born in 1186 and died in 1249. Originally from Jianyang, now part of Nanping, Fujian province, and was a renowned forensic scientist during the Southern Song Dynasty. He is also considered a foundational figure for forensic science worldwide. Many autopsy methods summarized by Zhang collected cases of injustice rectified, are on par with modern science. To this day, these methods are still applied. T. Hin. Equivalent to today's provincial-level judge and prosecutor. He was praised as an honest, upright, and skilled case-solving official. Zhang diligently read and studied famous medical and pharmacological work, applying knowledge of physiology, pathology, pharmacology, poison, and methods of diagnosing illnesses and examining wounds and corpses in practice. Collected cases of injustice rectified. The first systematic forensic science book in China. Collected cases of injustice rectified, such as types of wounds, autopsy methods, body dissection techniques, crime scene investigation, cause of death determination, types of poisons, and emergency and detoxification methods. Back in the Southern Song Dynasty in Guangxi, one day, a villager reported a murder case. The victim was stabbed dozens of times in the abdomen, and the body was hidden in roadside grass. After preliminary examination, everyone believed he was killed at night, likely by robbers. The county magistrate hastily concluded it was a robbery murder, and, unable to identify the culprit, left the case unsolved. But at that time, a court official was on patrol in Guangxi. By chance, he overheard villagers buzzing about the details of that bloody murder case. That official was Zhang. He immediately went to question the county magistrate. Was the victim wearing clothes? The county magistrate stammered, unable to answer, as he hadn't even visited the crime scene. Then what was the murder weapon? Zhang realized many details were unclear, so he went to the scene himself. After examining the body, Zhang found the victim's expensive clothes were still intact. The victim still had some jewelry on, and even the money in the pocket was not missing. After conducting an autopsy, Judge Zhang discovered that the wound edges were very neat, quite deep, and of moderate length. He determined that the murder weapon was a sickle, and this murderer was very cruel. There were dozens of such wounds, indicating the killer harbored intense hatred for them. Therefore, he ruled out the possibility that the victim was killed for robbery. This might be a murder motivated by personal hatred. However, the victim's wife told Zhang that her husband treated everyone in the village kindly and never had any conflicts with anyone. She truly couldn't think of anyone who would hate him enough to want to kill him. Zhang ordered his subordinates to immediately go to every household in the village and collect all their sickles. Anyone hiding one would be charged with murder. Soon after, the subordinates collected all the sickles in the village, both old and new. Each sickle was clearly marked with its owner's name. These sickles were all dry, clean, and had no bloodstains. However, this did not confuse Zhang at all. He had anticipated this situation. He ordered his subordinates to neatly arrange the sickles on the ground and wait. After a while, countless flies swarmed in, and strangely, they all landed on the same sickle. Zhang immediately concluded that the owner of this sickle was the murderer who killed the man. Whose sickle is this? A man immediately stood up, wife, and asked. Yes, a few days ago, he came to our house to borrow money, but my husband refused. So, he became very angry. He muttered as he left, saying you would kill my husband. Song Si then brought the sickle before him and said, do you know why only your sickle attracted all the flies here? You washed off the blood, but the smell of blood isn't. You can deceive human eyes, but you can't. The sickle's owner suddenly collapsed, realizing he could no longer deny it. He confessed to his crime. Today, using flies to solve cases is still effectively employed by forensic experts. And below is evidence from a real case. Forest rangers patrolling the woods discovered over 20 decomposing human body parts. After verification, they confirmed it was a homicide case. The authorities immediately intervened. However, they faced many difficulties because the remains were severely decomposed. If they couldn't identify the victim or determine where the victim came from, it would be hard to find the killer. The case would reach a dead end. After autopsy and medical examination, forensic experts concluded that the skeletal remains belonged to the same person. They noted many similarities between the thigh bones and arm bones. They concluded it was a woman in her 20s, about 1.6 meters tall. But the results stopped there, and they couldn't find additional information like the time of death or crime scene. Therefore, entomologists were invited to assist in the investigation. They began studying the maggots found on different body parts. These were the only clues they had at the time. After more than 10 days of research, the entomologists presented their report. There were two different types of maggots on the limbs, Megacephala and Ptosia. The entomologists then cultured maggots of these two species under the same environmental conditions. During cultivation, they compared the size of the maggots at the time the skeleton was discovered with those cultured in the lab. They found that the two types of maggots yielded completely different results. From this, they calculated the time of death. Megacephala indicated the time of death was 3 days before the limbs were found, while Ptosia indicated it was 4 days before. Why did this happen? Did the entomologists make a mistake in their research? Even they were uncertain about the results they had produced. When forensic scientists and entomologists discussed together, they discovered new clues. First, Megacephala is common in the south, where the body was found. But Patinsky is very rare, only found in some northern regions. We can draw the following conclusion. Patinsky was infected in the north 4 days ago, while Megacephala was infected in the south 3 days ago. This means the victim was killed in the north 4 days ago, then the body was moved to the south, the discovery site 3 days ago. The police expanded the investigation and learned that 4 days before the case was discovered, a woman named Selena went missing. She was a young, beautiful, and wealthy woman. Through street camera surveillance, the police found that after Selena went missing, a suspicious vehicle moved to the scene. That vehicle belonged to Alex. Based on these two clues, the police searched his car. However, Alex's car was very clean, with no suspicious traces. Due to many suspicious points, the entomologists searched Alex's car again the next day. They carefully checked every nook and cranny and found a few fly larvae in the car's chassis. After testing, they turned out to be Pochinsky, the larva found on the victim's body. But that clue was still insufficient to convict. The most important evidence missing was DNA. Finally, Pham Y obtained a blood sample from the surrounding insects. After DNA comparison, the results showed the blood sample belonged to Selena. Thus, the case was solved. Alex could not deny it and confessed to all his actions. He was obsessed with Selena's beauty, but she paid no attention to him. Therefore, he harbored resentment and killed Selena. This case shows that even from a small larva, crucial clues can be found to solve a crime. You may not believe it, but such crime-solving methods have existed for 700 years. Going back to the year 1831, when a young man named Gills, a genius in history and linguistics at Cambridge University, after many examinations, was sent to the East to study sinology. Gills had a special mission, different from other diplomats and sinologists. He had a particular interest in Zhu Zi's Neo-Confucianism. Zhu Zi's doctrine emphasizes the opposition between heavenly principle and human. It advocates discarding selfish desires and submitting to heavenly principle, meaning people should accept their fate. Preserve heavenly principle, restrain human desire. When Gills first arrived in China and encountered this ideology, he was very disappointed as Confucianism promoted contentment with one's lot, lacking the spirit of pursuing scientific knowledge for development. He thought something needed to be done to correct this mistake in the Chinese people. Ben Am. Today we commonly call it pinyin, using Latin letters to represent the pronunciation of Chinese characters, i.e., the Latinization of Chinese. He believed that complex Chinese characters limited the thinking of the Chinese people. The Chinese must eliminate Chinese characters to align with Western science. The first version of Chinese pinyin was created this way. 6 years later, in 1837, Gills was invited to attend a local court session in Enigma. The courtroom was scientifically arranged, with a presiding judge, a secretary, and security personnel. They ever watched the drama? Gills observed the court session with interest. He noticed that when Chinese officials tried cases, they seemed to have a reference book. When encountering difficulties, they just consulted the book, and all problems were solved. It was like an encyclopedia. What is this? This is China. As soon as he finished listening, Yu felt extremely excited. Shi Yuan Ji Lu. That night, Yu stayed up all night reading the book. The more he read, the more surprised he couldn't stop because the book was so scientific. It was filled with real cases, states of death, and sharp reasoning explaining the causes of each case. Such rational ideas were even more modern than European forensic science of the same period. After finishing, he then asked who the author of the book was. Upon learning the answer, Yu laughed at himself. Because the author of this book was actually a judge from the Song dynasty 600 years ago, and his name was Song Si. And Song Si was a disciple of Zhu Xi, the very person he had previously criticized, saying that his Confucian thoughts lacked the spirit of pursuing scientific knowledge for development. Yu was wrong. And fortunately, he had truly found what he was looking for. That was the scientific spirit of pursuing. Now let's look at a more scientific story. Shi Yuan Ji Lu. The book tells that one day, when people left the town in the early morning, they discovered a charred corpse in front of a house. Most people thought he had unfortunately died in a fire. Song Si found many suspicious points and guessed that the corpse was not accidentally burned to death. The victim was killed first, then the body was burned to create a fake scene. To test his hypothesis, he had to find evidence. First, Song Si ordered someone to bring a mat and wipe the floor clean. Then, pour rice vinegar and wine heavily onto the floor. The wine and vinegar gradually soaked into the floor. Immediately after, bloodstains appeared on, proving that the victim did not die from fire but had external impact. It could have been a sharp weapon. When comparing the location of the bloodstains on the floor with the corpse, he saw that the part of the body that lost the most blood was the head area. He conducted an autopsy and found a stab wound on the temple of the corpse. Then, Song Si narrowed down the suspects, screened the victim's relationships, searched for suspicious locations, and found a weapon matching the wound. Of course, he later solved the case.
Using vinegar and wine to detect bloodstains is very similar to modern scientific experiments. Its principle is like this. When proteins in blood come into contact with acetic acid,
they coagulate into fibrin strands. Alcohol can dissolve these strands, and alcohol evaporates easily.
When evaporating, it brings these fibrin strands to the surface, invisible to the naked eye.
To this day, forensic scientists still use this principle to restore bloodstains that have been washed away or decomposed. Forensic science level 600 years ago was on par with today. However, using vinegar and wine only applies to fresh bloodstains. So for cases that happened long ago, is there any way to detect bloodstains? Currently, in modern technology, scientists use ultraviolet light fluorescence and other optical methods to find traces of remaining blood. What about Sanxi? What method did he use at that time? He continued writing in the book. Once, there was a man who died without any wounds, yet was not poisoned either. Based on preliminary assessment, it was concluded to be a natural death. The victim died suddenly, and the case would soon be closed.
But unfortunately for Mr. Tu, Tom Tu was the one assigned to investigate the case.
He launched an investigation. First, he re-examined the corpse.
He ordered wine and vinegar to be poured all over the victim's body.
Then, the body was brought out into the sunlight. Next, he used an oil paper umbrella to shade the area needing observation.
The harsh sunlight passed through the oil paper umbrella. Gradually, scratches on the victim's body were revealed.
From there, after clarifying the details of the case, Tom Tu found the real culprit. This story shows that Tom Tu used future technology to solve a difficult case of that time.
The use of the oil paper umbrella follows the same principle as the ultraviolet radiation method. Because the oil paper umbrella is made from materials with red, brown, light yellow, and the natural color of tung oil,
it can filter some rays in sunlight, including infrared and ultraviolet rays. These rays shine on the surface and make small scratches appear. Now, I think all of you understand Gil's feeling at that moment, truly delighted and excited.
The most advanced chemical and optical principles invented by Western scientists of that time were all flexibly utilized by Tom Tu.
Tom Tu also recorded tetanus in his book. He said that tetanus is caused by tiny organisms invisible to the naked eye, entering the body through wounds. Remember, that is knowledge of bacteriology that scientists did not discover until the 20th century. Collected records of redressing injustices. It is truly a book ahead of its time, laying the foundation for the development of many fields even to this day. Collected records of redressing injustices. At that time, he suddenly felt that the methods and theories described in the book were too detailed. If it were disseminated and fell into the hands of clever criminals, what would the consequences be? He tried many times to destroy the book himself. But in the end, he still sent the book away, and it appeared on the Song Emperor's desk.
When the emperor finished reading it, he shared the same concerns as Tom Tu.
Just like in our modern era,
there have been many horrific cases occurring with methods and sophisticated techniques imitated from Conan or Sherlock stories, causing difficulties for investigative agencies.
Perhaps throughout history, across dynasties, there have been many ahead of their time scientific ideas, geniuses like Tom Tu.
But fearing they could not control such great achievements, they destroyed many excellent inventions and innovations.
Collected records of redressing injustices. It teaches us how to communicate with corpses.
Through scientific knowledge, we can understand what the deceased wants to tell us through the traces left behind.
I recommend you read it at least once in your lifetime, to absorb the essence left by the ancients. And remember, do not apply it for evil purposes. That's all for today.
The world of Dai Han. See you in the next videos.